Hey, good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gadi Schwartz, coming to you from Los Angeles. And here are the stories we're watching tonight, starting with the beginnings of Hurricane Idalia already belting parts of Florida.
It's pretty nerve-wracking to see it coming right at you, and the storm surge is what we're really worried about.
And she's right. The rise in water generated by this now Category 2 is predicted to be life-threatening. Then a graduate student has been charged with first-degree murder in the killing of a faculty member at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, while the district attorney says he's not looking for the death penalty. And a mother dies during childbirth, and a Los Angeles family wants answers and accountability.
April Valentine was 31 years old, giving birth to her baby, one and only baby.
Then we are going to check back in with Harvard astrophysicist Javi Loeb, as he says what you're looking at are artifacts from another world. But then why were they found at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean? Stick around and we'll ask it. And right now, Hurricane Idalia is barreling towards the western coast of Florida, and it is intensifying fast. It's a Category 2 right now, but by the time it makes landfall tomorrow, it could strengthen to a Category 3. Now, this is where Idalia is at right now. Winds of over 100 miles an hour, about 200 miles south of Tampa. And to give you guys a better idea of how big this thing is, check this out. This is video of Idalia taken from the International Space Station earlier today, if we can put that up. This is the path it's expected to take. It is on track to make landfall by 8 a.m. tomorrow. As the winds pick up and the storm inches closer, water is going to start seriously flooding the streets, and we're already starting to see that happen. On the left, you're going to be seeing video out of Fort Myers, and on the right, Naples, Florida. Evacuation orders are now in place in over 25 counties across Florida. And this purple area that you're about to see, that is where the hurricane is expected to make landfall. Now, the storm surge is expected to be anywhere from 10 feet to 15 feet tall. The National Weather Service in Tallahassee is making it super clear how important it is to prepare and, if needed, evacuate, saying no major hurricanes have ever moved through the Appalachia Bay. Some people in the path of the storm right now are terrified.
This is the first time where I've actually been very nervous that Cedar Key as a whole, where it's a very special place to a lot of people, might not be here when we get back.
And NBC News Now anchor Tom Yamas is in the hurricane's path and joins us from Crystal River, Florida. Tom, how's Crystal River doing right now? And are people listening to those evacuation warnings?
Yeah, you know, a lot of people are concerned because of everything you laid out there. People have never seen anything like this. It's likely going to be a Category 3. The Big Bend area, the Nature Coast, as it's known here in Florida, has never seen a hurricane this strong. Even though hurricanes hit Florida all the time, nearly almost every year, this area has been spared, this sort of stretch of Florida there. It's a special place. Look, a lot of people come here to vacation. They come here to swim with the manatees, to see the manatees. That's what this area is known for. There's a portion of the river that feeds out into the Gulf, so there's great fishing. A lot of people like to be outdoors here. But a lot of times, you know, they get a little cavalier and they think they can ride out the storm, but this one's different. So the people we've talked to have for the most part, evacuated. It does sort of feel like a ghost town at times. We see people sometimes still closing up their houses, boarding up their businesses. I spoke to one homeowner who lives right on the water, and I said, you know, what are you going to do? And he says, listen, we're just going to wait it out. Here's what he told me.
But this one, I think we'll bail out. I think we will right at the last minute there.
What worries you the most about this storm? The
surge. That's a big thing. You know, wind, I think we can handle. I don't know that we're going to get that much here. We're going to get blocked by the trees and everything. Yeah. But this surge, you know, that's what do they say, run from the water. And that's probably what we'll do.
So Gadi, the only problem with that sort of strategy is that, you know, at some point, and I was speaking with the sheriff of Citrus County here earlier on my show, he was telling me he's going to pull his officers off the streets once the winds get between 35 and 45 miles per hour, because it's just too dangerous to be answering 911 calls trying to rescue people. So if you don't get out now, it's going to just get darker, and once the water starts to creep up, it's already too late. So they're telling people, get out now, and for those who haven't, they're just going to have to hunker down.
And Tom, as you're driving around, do you get the impression that a lot of these houses are low-lying, or do they sit up high? What's the makeup of that community look like?
You know, I don't think you can see behind me anymore because it's getting a little darker here, but there's some houses that were built in the 50s that are very low lying. They're essentially built right almost at sea level, and there's a king tide right now, which is when the sun, the moon, and the earth all come together, and it forms this higher tide about a foot to 2 feet higher. And so the water's already creeping up into people's backyards without Hurricane Idalia churning off the coast. Now, other people build those sort of big houses on stilts that they're almost 2 and 3 stories high, and those will probably be okay. But when you have that rushing water, you still got to be careful because you have to hope those pilings, those stilts, that they can withstand that rushing water because, again, this is a storm surge like no one has ever seen before. I spoke with the mayor here. He was just on our show, but I spoke to him earlier, and I said, you know, what's the one thing you're afraid of? And he talked to me about that storm surge. His name's Mayor Joe Meek. Here's what he had to say. They're talking about up to a 15-foot storm surge for this area. Yeah. If that happens, I mean, this area is wiped out, right?
Sure. We have a significant, we're standing right now probably about 5 foot above sea level. And so if we're looking at anywhere from 8 to 12 foot of surge, yes, we'll be impacted significantly.
So, Gadi, just to give you an idea of what would happen here, he was just talking to me here, and I asked him, you know, the water's right here. There's a canal just behind us here. What does that mean? And he said when the storm surge comes, if it's up to 12 feet, we would both be underwater. Kind of puts things into perspective there.
Absolutely. Tom Yamas, please stay safe out there. And NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us now. Bill, can you tell us the latest on the track-in for Idalia?
Yeah, we just got the APM advisory in from the National Hurricane Center, and they have brought the winds up to 105 miles per hour. And the only thing that really makes that significant is that earlier this morning it was at 70, so it's increased 35 miles per hour in strength just during the day today. To meet the definition of rapid intensification, it has to do 35 in 24 hours. This literally did it in about 12 hours. So we have officially met rapid intensification, and all that means is that we have a growing storm that's getting bigger, faster, stronger, quickly. You can see the center of the storm here, the eye off the coast. This is what everyone wants to avoid. This is the buzzsaw when it comes on shore. This will be like a tornado when it hits land, somewhere up around the Big Bend area. These other bands is where we can get some strong gusty winds, tropical storm force winds, some down power lines, maybe isolated tornadoes. So it's not like we're going to go, have a piece of cake night here on the west coast of Florida. You're still going to be up here in the, occasional claps of thunder, and you're definitely going to hear the shutters blowing around when this line comes through. And it's just off the coast, and that's about to head up towards Sarasota here in the Fort Myers and eventually up to Tampa. So here's the latest from the Hurricane Center. I mentioned that the peak winds are now at 105. If it gets really much stronger, it's going to be a Category 3. So Category 2 goes up to 110. Once we get over 110, 115, that's when we go to a major Category 3. We think that'll happen during the overnight hours, maybe at 2 a.m. or possibly 5 a.m. And the winds are north at 16. That's the direction the storm's heading, north at 16 miles per hour. So if it continues due north, it would head to Tallahassee. But we do think there's a little bit of a bend in here at the end. That makes you nervous in Tallahassee. I know you're going to be staring at this all night long, but this will make that little bend here, and it looks like landfall sometime around 6 to 8 a.m. So that's only 10 to 12 hours from right now. So we'd like this to not get too much stronger, Gadi, than it is right now. But the forecast does call for this to be a Category 3, borderline Category 4, and when that landfall occurs.
Borderline Category 4. Bill, we're also hearing about the possibility of tornadoes. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we have numerous concerns. When you get a strong storm like this, you get a lot of different concerns. Obviously, the storm surge is number one. That's what everyone's talking about. You run from the water. So that 10 to 15 feet, and even the 4 to 6 feet and the 6 to 9, that's where all the damage will be. And that's going to be the early morning hours tomorrow, probably starting around, maybe 4 a.m. or so, and then lasting till about 10 a.m. And then here's the area of concern for tornadoes. It's a large area, including Tampa, Orlando, Daytona Beach, all the way back up through coastal Georgia, South Carolina, and even a little sliver of North Carolina. Some storms produce a lot of tornadoes. Others don't produce hardly any. We know we had one earlier today around Marco Island. We'll wait and see during the day tomorrow just what the structure of the storm looks like and how many tornadoes. And, God, it's not the type of tornadoes that we get like in the spring severe season that like tear apart entire towns. These are usually weaker, short-lived tornadoes. But obviously, if they hit your house and knock your roof off, you're not happy about it.
Still a very alarming silver lining there. Yeah. Bill Cairns, thanks so much. And like we said, the storm is rapidly intensifying, so we'll check back with Bill in about a half an hour now. And turning to another story that we're following, a graduate student at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, is now in custody after that deadly shooting on campus yesterday. 34-year-old Tylee Shee was in court today where he was charged with first-degree murder and the possession of a firearm on school grounds. He's being held without bail. Now, the victim has been identified as an associate professor in the Applied Science Department, and he's worked there since 2019. Police say the suspect and the victim did know each other, but the motive still remains unclear.
We have determined that the victim and suspect knew each other, and the suspect went directly to the victim and then left Caudle Labs.
Well, let's bring in NBC's Dana Griffith to break this down. Dana, what else do we know about them knowing each other? It sounds very clearly like this was a targeted attack.
It definitely was a targeted attack, according to police. We know that they worked together in some capacity. We know that the professor had a research group, the Yen Research Group, and she was actually listed under that website as one of the graduate students working with him. We know that he worked in that building where this shooting happened. It's unclear if this was inside his classroom or if this was in an office, inside the hallway. Police have not said. All they will tell us is that there were people inside that building, but they didn't want to give us any information about witnesses, how closely they worked together, and whether this was motivated by school or something more personal. They have yet to reveal that, and they hope to learn that through this investigation.
And Dina, we saw so many of those videos yesterday of panicked students, some of them jumping out of windows. Have we heard from some of the students on how they're doing today?
Yeah, some of them are really freaked out. I mean, you can take a look at this now. Like, they did not know when that active shooter alert was sent whether a gunman was coming to their classroom, so they did whatever they could, jumping out of the window. We've heard of students hiding in the bathroom. Listen to what some other students told us.
We all just stayed hiding in the stalls, squatting on the toilets, just scared. We didn't know what was happening.
This is a situation that we really shouldn't even have to be worrying about. You know, we're in class and lecture, and we have to be concerned about gunmen coming into our classrooms and, you know, hurting people when we're just here to learn, like anybody should be able to. So I'm very angry about this, and something needs to be done.
Yep, they're very angry. They're also traumatized by this. There may have been one person killed, but you've got hundreds of students that were impacted, not only at the school, but you had other nearby elementary schools that were also impacted. For them, it was the first day of kindergarten for a lot of these kids. Their parents waiting hours, anxiously waiting for word. And so they're now having to provide counselors for those young kids who have to make sense and wrap their head around this thing that has become so common in America. And it's ridiculous. And people are very upset over it.
Meanwhile, the alleged shooter, he's being held with no bail. What happens next?
So he'll be back in court September 18th. Right now, we don't know how this trial is going to play out, if he's going to plead guilty, if he's going to, you know, try to prolong a trial. We don't know. We know that he appeared in court today. He wore orange jumpsuit, was shackled. He spoke through an interpreter. He could face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Attorney General said that they are not seeking the death penalty in this case. So if he is found guilty, he could spend the rest of his life in jail.
Dana Griffith, thanks so much. And now to something that people have been wanting to do for a long time, haggle over the price of prescription drugs directly with drug companies. While you and I, that's still a long ways away. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that. It does look like for the first time, Medicare will, and that could potentially save millions of Americans a whole lot of money. Earlier today, the Biden administration announced that 10 drugs made that list, including blood thinners, diabetes medications, and a blood cancer drug. And joining us now from the White House is NBC's Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, how is the White House going to get this done?
Well, it is a part of a law that has already passed, the Inflation Reduction Act. And what it does is it allows the Medicare overseeing agency to negotiate directly with pharmaceutical companies on the prices for a number of drugs, you outlined some of them, that many seniors rely on, and they end up paying a lot of money out of pocket. This is a long-time promise from the Biden administration, and it has been very difficult to accomplish. It has been put into law now, and the process of making it happen is underway. The first 10 drugs have been identified, another 15 will be named next year, and so on and so on. want. And what they believe is the buying power that comes with Medicare ought to be able to negotiate a more favorable price, like many other countries do. But they have been constrained because of largely the pharmaceutical lobby and the way the organization of the law had worked until now. The president talked about this earlier today.
Big Pharma charges Americans more than 3 times what they charge other countries simply because they could. And I think it's outrageous. That's why these negotiations matter. We're going to keep standing up to Big Pharma, and we're not going to back down.
And the White House believes as many as 9 million seniors could be positively affected by this, with the cost of drugs to be determined through a negotiation process, and that will be known to us in early 2024, and then it will be implemented in 2026. There are some legal challenges to this, of course, but the White House says it believes the law is sound in this area, and they point out that other parts of the government, like the Department of Defense and the Office of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Veterans Affairs on behalf of the VA, they have been able to negotiate for lower drug prices when they are buying them in bulk for members of the military or veterans through their medical services. And there's a big savings. They want that kind of savings to be made real for seniors. And then they hope there'll be a wider impact in the marketplace where drugs will be more competitively priced and so forth. All the drugs on the list had to be on the market for at least 9 years. And there will be other drugs rolling into that, and perhaps new competition will arise as well. Gadi?
So good news coming, but looking like 2026, right?
That's built into the law, and there is a lot of time here. And of course, when you say 2026, that's after the next presidential election. It is a long runway, but part of it is setting up the administration for choosing the drugs, doing the negotiations, and all of the back and forth. Certainly everyone would like to see it happen faster for those who believe this is a good policy, but it will take some time. At the same time, they believe that having this kind of change may shift some of the dynamics. We've already seen a cap on the price of insulin, for example. That can have different real market effects on the marketplace of drugs. And so they're hoping that this will be a practical impact for people to save money, and that there may be other benefits that come as a result of the negotiations. Gadi?
NBC's Kelly O'Donnell. Thanks so much. And still to come, we are tracking the hurricane all hour. We're going to bring you updates as we get them. Plus, a 31-year-old mom died during childbirth, and now the maternity ward where she delivered her baby is shutting down. We're going to have that exclusive story next. Hey there, welcome back. And here are some of the headlines we're watching tonight. A family of 4 has been found dead inside of a New York City apartment, and it's being investigated as a murder-suicide. The 2 youngest victims were just 3 and 1 years old, and their parents were also identified. They were all found with knife wounds after police performed a wellness check there, and neighbors say the dad worked as the building superintendent. And Miami Mayor Francis Schwartz is ending his presidential bid, and this makes him the first GOP candidate to drop out of the 2024 race. The move comes after he failed to qualify for the first Republican debate last week. And Mark Meadows testified in court that his actions laid out in the Georgia election interference indictment were just part of his job as chief of staff. He argues that he was trying to determine whether election fraud allegations were true, a move the Fulton County DA says were not part of his official duties. Meadows' claims are part of his request to have the case moved to federal court. And House Majority Leader Steve Scalise says he's being treated for blood cancer. He says he was diagnosed after his blood work results came back irregular, and that luckily his cancer is treatable. You might remember Scalise was seriously hurt in a shooting at a congressional baseball practice back in 2017. And an argument over sauce between 2 teenagers outside a McDonald's in Washington, D.C. turned deadly. A 16-year-old is facing charges including second-degree murder for allegedly killing another 16-year-old. The teen suspect appeared in court yesterday, where her attorney argued she acted in self-defense. And now to an NBC News exclusive out of California, where one hospital's maternal child health services center will be closing this October after the death of a 31-year-old mother in January. NBC's Zincle Esamoah has a story.
I will not have any complications. I will have a good birthing experience. April Valentine said these affirmations every single day. She thought she would live to see her first child, Anaya, born. But April didn't make it out of the maternity ward at Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, California.
April Valentine was 31 years old.
Now, following months of protest, that ward is set to close October 25th, 2023. Valentine's family filed a lawsuit on Tuesday, alleging in part wrongful death and professional negligence with demand for a jury trial. The Valentine family filed a complaint with the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, alleging systemic and racist practices and seeking answers regarding the circumstances of her death.
We are here to amplify the story of April Valentine.
An initial inspection of Valentine's incident found Centinela failed to prevent the deficiencies that caused or are likely to cause serious injury or death. The LA County coroner ruled her cause of death on January 10, 2023, a blood clot, which the hospital failed to assess for and intervene in. Valentine's partner, Nija Robertson, and her sister, Keisha Cordova, were at Centinela during the labor. They allege Valentine's doctor, Gwen Allen, did not arrive to the hospital for hours.
They said, well, we can't call the doctor will cuss us out. The doctor don't like us calling her.
A formal inspection saying the hospital repeatedly failed to notify the physician as Valentine's vitals became abnormal. They allege as the hours went on, nurses were inattentive, turned her doula away despite previously greenlighting it, and pressured Valentine, who wanted a natural birth, to get an epidural. Soon after, they allege Valentine's legs began swelling and she threw up. Valentine's partner and sister say eventually April stopped breathing, but nurses did not perform CPR, so Robertson did. According to the inspection, minutes later, doctors intervened with CPR, but April died. Their baby delivered by crash C-section, unresponsive but alive. Beyond Valentine and the maternity ward, an ongoing NBC investigation found substantive instances where Centinela failed to keep records and notify physicians and family about patient pain and conditions. Following a public information request, NBC obtained statements of deficiencies and plans of correction, outlining incidents at Centinela, including failing to notify family following a drastic change in patient condition, ongoing reports of rodent activity in the hospital due to an unfixed broken door that was later fixed, and, in one case, patient death as a result of failing to ensure proper medical care. Documents say the hospital took plans of corrective action, including multiple incidents of staff counseling and re-education, random cleanliness tests, and, in at least one case, employee suspension and termination. In a statement, the attorney for Valentine's attending physician, Dr. Gwen Allen, said Dr. Allen is prohibited by federal law from publicly commenting about her treatment of Miss Valentine. Dr. Allen did not cause Miss Valentine's death. In a statement to NBC, Centinela Hospital Medical Center said, in part, the center disputes the allegations made against the hospital and is dedicated to delivering compassionate, quality care to all patients. The center denies allegations of systemic racism, noting that their healthcare team reflects the varied ethnic and racial makeup of the community, adding that the hospital has been recognized as a top national facility. Centinela says they're closing their maternal ward due to an exponential decrease in demand for maternal health services. Though the ward will soon be gone, Valentine's family says their fight to preserve her legacy is only just beginning.
When she gets older, what are you going to tell her about?
Her mom, I'm going to tell her mom was an amazing woman with a great personality.
And Zincle Asamoah joins us now for more on her reporting. Zincle, this story is heartbreaking. When it comes to stories around black maternal health, this is not an anomaly, right?
Gadi, that is 100% right. We know in the United States, the reality is black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause. That's compared to white women. And medical experts have rightly pointed out this is not some predisposition we have, right? Much of it stems from medical implicit bias and systemic lack of resources to this specific community. Now, California, where you are, is unique in that its maternal death rates are among the lowest in the country. Actually, you can see it there on your screen. But even still, Still, for black women in California, just like April Valentine, that rate of maternal death is more than 3 times higher compared to white women still. And so Valentine's family tells me they are devastated that she became one of those statistics, but they are hoping for what they're saying, #justice for April Valentine. And to them, this lawsuit filed today is just the first step of many. And notably, the state of California also issued that hospital, Centinela, a $75,000 fine earlier this year. So this is just the beginning of this story. They cited an unidentified maternal death and hospital administrative penalties. So a lot to follow here, but clearly every life matters, including April's. Gadi.
Such an important story. Zinkley, thanks so much. And coming up, tracking this storm, we've got the latest on Hurricane Idalia, those breaking details coming up. But first, you got to see this. A Pennsylvania park manager came to the rescue of this little bear cub. The poor little guy got his head stuck in a plastic container, no doubt looking for some treats there. And luckily, he was spotted on the side of the road and got a helping hand. After a few seconds of shaking, that container pops off, and you can see him just sitting here. Look at that. And bewildered but free. The park ranger says that he scampered away and up a tree after catching his breath. Thankfully, he's okay. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. And here's a quick check of some of the headlines we're following out here in the West. A woman was shot and killed after stabbing a police officer in the head, and the whole incident was caught on camera. Now, this happened last week in Las Vegas. Police were responding to a domestic disturbance, and they placed Sandra Lopez Ochoa under arrest. Officers claim when they took her wrist, she grabbed a knife and stabbed one of the officers in the head. They also say she then turned to another officer, and that's when that officer shot her. The injured officer is in stable condition. And the Department of Justice says it has busted a malware platform called Quackbot that hacked hundreds of thousands of computers. The DOJ says the cybercriminals sent out booby-trapped emails that led to financial crimes, and it was known as Operation Duck Hunt, and it involved the FBI and agencies from at least a half a dozen European countries. And out in the Nevada desert, climate activists blocked a 2-lane highway headed to the Burning Man Fest in Nevada. A 28-foot trailer was used to block the roadway, causing an hour backup for about 80,000 festival goers before Nevada Rangers drove straight through that blockade. One ranger reportedly pulled a gun and threatened to shoot. The activists say they were protesting the festival's consumerism. And we are keeping a close eye on Hurricane Idalia. The massive storm is expected to make landfall tomorrow morning between 6 and 9 in the morning. And that's just going to happen south of Perry, Florida. Right now, it is a Category 2 storm, but the National Weather Service said just minutes ago that it's probably going to turn into a major hurricane pretty soon. And with that comes winds of more than 110 miles an hour and life-threatening storm surge. And we've already seen that happen. Sanibel Island just got hit with some huge waves, making driving conditions out there very dangerous. The storm is also causing chaos in the sky. Hundreds of flights have been canceled so far. Tampa's International Airport closed altogether, and at least 24 counties have already issued evacuation orders across Florida. FEMA is making it very clear that people need to take these warnings seriously.
Very few people can survive being in the path of major storm surge, and this storm will be deadly if we don't get out of harm's way and take it seriously.
And NBC's Gadi Vanegas joins us now from Crystal River, Florida. Gadi, a mandatory evacuation order is in place for that area right now. How are things going?
Gadi, there's mandatory evacuations for several areas along the coast. 22 counties have some type of evacuation order in Florida right now. So this is what's considered a Zone A. The state of Florida has a map of evacuation zones that has been previously determined. Zone A's like this one are very low off the water. And this morning we got a notification on our phone saying there was a mandatory evacuation here. So as you can imagine, it's very quiet here. We did get some rain, one of the outer bands of the storm earlier, heavy rain, heavy wind, and that has now stopped as we wait for more of that rain to make its way here. So as most of Florida, the danger here is the possibility of this storm surge. Authorities want people to keep in mind that that storm surge could be as high as 12 or more feet. I talked to some of the people that work in a hotel right next to me, Gadi. They tell me that if this water that you see behind me rises more than 6 or 7 feet, then the water will be going into the properties. There's no way to stop it. Meanwhile, other people have chosen to stay in their homes, of course, not the ones that live right off the water, but in these neighborhoods and wait for the storm to pass. We're going to hear from one of the residents in the Tampa Bay area talking about the way he was feeling earlier today.
Myself, I am a little anxious because I haven't been through it. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, though, so I guess it's not as bad for me, but just trying to make sure everything's right, everything's ready, get everything prepared. It's a big deal.
Right, so for people that are not in the path or the direct path of the storm, Gadi, there's still that danger of that storm surge that could affect their properties. That's why they had these mandatory orders in place for several areas along the West Coast here in Florida. And also, Gadi, I should say that the power company has warned a lot of the customers here that there could be a lot of power outages once the storm makes landfall. And they do have thousands of workers and trucks standing by just east of us, ready to come into these areas and make repairs if necessary, Gadi.
And Gad, evacuation is a lot easier for some, more so than others. Some places like hospitals, retirement homes, prisons, it's a whole different story. What's happening in those types of situations?
Of course, right? It's much more difficult for those types of buildings to evacuate. For a resident that lives down the street from here right off the water, they just have to pack up and go to a friend's house or a relative's house far away from the water, right? But that's not the case, for example, for a hospital. In Tampa Bay, Tampa General Hospital sits right off of downtown on a small island, and they had to put up what's called an aqua fence, and it's essentially a barrier to stop the water if they have that storm surge, because it's a hospital, and obviously you can't just move patients. And also, that hospital might be necessary during the storm, right? And then, of course, you have the detention centers all across the state. The Department of Corrections says they've already moved 4,000 prisoners from specific detention centers that were more vulnerable into other areas, and they are prepared to move more prisoners if necessary, Gadi.
Well, I can't count the amount of hurricanes I've covered. I've never seen an aqua fence. That's fascinating. Gad Venegas, thanks so much, and stay safe out there. And let's bring back NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns to tell us what's going on with the storm right now. Bill, can you tell us what the latest is?
Yeah, the storm's closing in on the coast. We're starting to get to the point where the tropical storm force winds are moving onto the coast. And then in a couple hours from now, we'll start talking about hurricane force gusts at least. So the storm itself, right now it's heading due north. So we're watching this Big Bend area here, right this location, from beautiful George Island, St. George Island, all the way down along the coastal area, Cedar Keys right here. Very swampy area, not beaches. That's where the landfall is going to be. So you're not going to see reporters kind of blowing in the breeze. And we are still thinking sometime around 6 to 8 a.m. So we're not that far away from this storm. 10 to 12 hours from now, we'll be talking about the landfall. And then during the day tomorrow, we'll track it through southern Georgia. And by tomorrow evening, somewhere near Savannah, and also the possibility of some very high surf there, even from storm surge. Our computer models, the black lines, the Hurricane Center, not much has changed. There's a couple to the left. There's a couple to the right. They likely will not change the forecast location at 11 p.m. They'll likely keep it right towards Perry. Just looking at this data, there's no reason to bring it closer to Tallahassee, and there's no reason to bring it closer to Cross City. So they'll probably leave it alone. And at the rate it's been intensifying, they'll probably still keep it as a major Category 3 at landfall, not likely a 4. It's kind of running out of time to get up to that 4. At least, fingers crossed, I hope so. But don't be surprised at 11 p.m. if we have a major hurricane. If not 11 p.m., then probably definitely at 2 a.m. So as far as the other things with this storm, flood risk, a lot of water. So we get the landfall. That's when we're going to get the damaging storm surge. That's when the damaging winds. And then during the day tomorrow, we're going to more talk about the heavy rain threat and the tornado threat. And this area maroon here is what we call a moderate risk of flash flooding. That includes a lot of areas here, from all the way from Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Savannah, New Brunswick, down into areas of North Florida. And the highest rainfall totals will be near the center at landfall, which will include areas like Tallahassee. And then during the day tomorrow, that rain will fall all in the inland areas. Some areas have a chance of getting, 7, 8, maybe see a high total of 12 inches possible near that landfall. As far as the max wind gusts go, that center of the storm, the little buzzsaw where the eye is, that's where we'll have extreme wind damage. And then as that moves inland, it'll weaken. But even by the time it gets to Lake City, near hurricane gusts, so a lot of trees in this area, a lot of power outages will be likely. Even tomorrow at this time, we'll probably still be talking about that into areas of southern Georgia, Gadi. So, it's We're done with the forecast and the prep time. Now it's kind of everyone's going to hunker down and just see how damaging this storm's going to be.
Yeah, a lot of people preparing for a very scary 24 hours. Bill Cairns, thanks so much. And coming up, a controversial kiss that is now being investigated. Spain's top soccer official says he is not stepping down after he kissed a player on the lips after the World Cup win. Those details are coming up, so stay tuned. Hey there, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world in 80 seconds. In Russia, Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was buried today. A private burial was held in his hometown of St. Petersburg, and Russian President Vladimir Putin did not attend. Putin previously called the armed rebellion a stab in the back. In Australia, the 3 U.S. Marines killed in that crash of an Osprey aircraft have been identified, and their bodies have been retrieved from the crash site. They were Corporal Spencer Collart of Virginia, Captain Eleanor LeBeau of Illinois, and Major Tobin Lewis of Colorado. They're all in the same unit and had been awarded the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. In Greece, firefighters are battling the largest wildfire ever recorded in the European Union. It's burned more than 300 square miles so far. That's an area bigger than New York City. Since it began just over a week ago, it's killed at least 20 people, and 18 of them were migrants from Turkey. And in Australia, a global first. A 64-year-old woman had a live 3-inch long parasitic worm removed from her brain. Here's how her neurosurgeon described the discovery.
I dissected around the abnormal area that you could see on the scan. I thought, gosh, that feels funny. You couldn't see anything more abnormal. And then I was able to really feel something separate. I took my tweezers or my tumor holding forceps and I pulled it out and I thought, gosh, what is that? It's moving. Take it out of my hands.
And the head of the Spanish Soccer Federation is now facing possible criminal charges for kissing a star player from the Women's World Cup team on the lips, she says, without her consent. NBC's Kelly Kobiea has the latest.
The head of Spanish soccer is under increasing pressure to resign today. A key meeting overnight did not go his way, and he now faces possible prosecution for kissing a star player on the lips. Overnight, Spanish prosecutors opened a criminal investigation into whether this kiss was an act of sexual assault. Spanish Soccer Federation President Luis Rubiales grabbed midfielder Jenny Hermoso's head, kissing her on the mouth after the team's World Cup win last week. FIFA has suspended Rubiales for 90 days pending its own investigation. And overnight, the Spanish Soccer Federation withdrew its support of Rubiales after a marathon emergency meeting, saying he should immediately present his resignation because of the latest events and the unacceptable behaviors that have seriously damaged the image of Spanish football. The incident at the award ceremony causing outrage. In locker room celebrations afterward, Hermoso can be heard saying, "I didn't like it." Rubiales apologized the next day, but later in the week claimed, "Hermoso lifted me off my feet, held my hips, my legs. We hugged," he said, accusing critics of false feminism and social assassination. His family rushing to his support. His cousin says, "We don't think what's happening is fair," adding his mother has locked herself in a church and gone on a hunger strike. Hermoso said she was pressured to say at first that the kiss was a natural expression of affection and gratitude, but now says, "At no time did I consent to the kiss that he gave me." The incident sparking protests in Spain and signs of support across the sports world. Crowds cheered Hermoso at a game over the weekend, with teams holding banners and U.S. players wearing wristbands saying, "We're with you." Spain's sports minister calling this the Me Too moment of Spanish football. Spanish men's teams and coaches have also backed Hermoso and her teammates. All 23 members of the World Cup winning team are now refusing to play until Rubiales steps down.
Kelly Kobiea, thanks so much. It has now been 2 years since the deadly attack at the Kabul airport during that chaotic withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, and Gold Star families who lost loved ones that day are still demanding answers. NBC's Ryan Nobles has more.
2 years ago, Herman and Alicia Lopez lost their son, Hunter.
It's something that no one thinks will ever happen to their family.
He was one of 13 U.S. service members killed during the ISIS bombing near the Abbey Gate at Kabul's airport in Afghanistan. He planned to join his hometown sheriff's office.
He didn't get that chance, and we just would like people to give us the truth of what happened and be honest with us.
The Lopez is one of several Gold Star families today demanding accountability.
I don't want to hear lies. I don't want to hear excuses from Joe Biden.
Many blaming President Biden.
Several presidents preceded Mr. Biden in this 20-year war, but none of them are to be held accountable for the withdrawal. That is he and he alone.
The chaotic U.S. withdrawal began as the Taliban quickly took over the country. President Biden has argued leaving Afghanistan was the right choice.
I was not going to extend this forever war, and I was not extending a forever exit.
Tonight, the Pentagon defending its response.
U.S. military commanders on the ground in Afghanistan made decisions that they could with the information that they had at the time.
And tonight, the Joint Chiefs Chair Mark Milley saying that the briefers have given the families, quote, every piece of information that they could, but saying that they do owe them accountability.
Ryan Nobles, thanks so much. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. And this next story is out of this world and out of this solar system. Scientists have discovered these little all balls here on Earth from super far away. So what the heck are they? We are looking for that answer coming up next. So stay tuned. And now for the future of everything. Chances are you probably know a little something about influencers. You know, the people who tell us what to wear or where we should be eating. But how much do you know about kidfluencers? Those are kids who have massive followings on social media and seem to make a ton of money, but that might not always be the case. So this month, the Illinois state legislature became the first state to pass amendments to its child labor laws, and it's all aimed at protecting these so-called kidfluencers. NBC's Maggie Vespa explains.
Ooh, animated. Each of the kids receive $1. They are a fun and entertaining way.
In an era when social media influencers can rake in substantial paychecks and clips of cute kids garner millions of views, one state is giving laws against exploitation a modern makeover.
Essentially, the state of Illinois is going after the money.
Yes.
Illinois this month became the first state to amend its child labor laws, adding protections for so-called kidfluencers. The new law, spearheaded by State Senator Dave Kaler, entitles kids under 16, featured in 30% of an adult's paid posts over a 30-day period, to a percentage of that money when they turn 18. If the adult fails to pay, the law gives the child grounds to sue.
This is now a business. We're talking millions of dollars in some cases. Then we need to set up some protection for the child.
The move's source, an Illinois teen bothered by videos of toddlers flooding her feed.
They're doing dances on TikTok, but also they're having vlogs of them crying. As we start to see these kids grow up, they're going to tell us their stories about the exploitation that's happened.
The bill mirrors a nearly century-old law protecting young Hollywood stars and named for silent film child actor Jackie Coogan, who claimed his parents squandered his earnings.
My first time not taking concrete with me to get my hair done.
Bobby Altoff hopes more states adopt this modern take. She used to post paid content of her daughter, but stopped after reading vicious comments. She says influencer friends who feature their kids favor regulation.
I don't think you should be able to just post and make your career off of your children.
A real-world debate over the kids growing up on our screens. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
And finally, some massive news on one of my favorite topics of all time, interstellar space travel. And no, we're not talking about some movie or some spaceship. This one starts way back in 2014 when we were all just going about our daily lives, and then all of a sudden, some sort of space something weighing about 1,000 pounds and like this big, the size of a beach ball, blasted through Earth's atmosphere above the Pacific Ocean near Papua New Guinea. It turned into a fireball, started raining down these teeny tiny molten pieces of iron into the sea. Again, no one noticed. So fast forward 5 years later, when Harvard professor Avi Loeb and his students started digging through old data, trying to find things that move way faster than normal meteors, and eureka! They did the math. They told the world, we think that something interstellar might have crashed in the Pacific. They got laughed at by some in the scientific community, but then U.S. Space Command came forward and basically said, oh, no, we think you actually might be right. Better yet, they think they might have a pretty good idea of where it crashed. And just like that, the race was on. Professor Avi Loeb convinced a bunch of scientists to set off on a ship. They went out to find this thing in the ocean. They started pulling magnets on sleds along the seafloor, and boom, they came back with 700 tiny balls like that, smaller than BBs, and they sent them off to be analyzed at labs all over the world. And what they found was pretty wild. In particular, some of the samples were enriched or seemed to be enriched in the combination of 3 elements: uranium, beryllium, and lanthanum. That's an alloy combination that we've never seen on Earth before, or the moon, or even Mars. And with that, I want to bring in Professor Avi Loeb himself to explain what we are actually looking at. Professor, thank you so much for being with us. I imagine this was like searching for a needle in a haystack, but under the sea with a magnetic sled. And you actually found something anomalous, right?
Yeah, it's the first time that scientists analyze material from a big object that came from outside the solar system. And it's thrilling. In the sense that, first of all, this object was unusual. It was moving faster than 95% of the stars in the vicinity of the sun. And second, it only disintegrated under extreme stress. So it was tougher than all the space rocks cataloged by NASA over the past decade, 272 of them. So that raised the possibility that maybe it's a Voyager-like meteor. Imagine Voyager that we sent out of the solar system, crashing into a planet like the Earth, once it exits the solar system, and appearing as a meteor. It would have unusual material strength because it's made of stainless steel. And moreover, it would have an unusual speed because it was propelled by the rocket effect. And so we went out there to see what we find. And amazingly, we found some tiny droplets from the surface of the object when it was exposed to the immense heat from the fireball that it created as it was moving through air. And that by itself was not enough. We brought it back to Harvard, and my colleague Stein Jacobson has a very sophisticated lab where we analyzed the composition and found a composition that was never discussed in the scientific literature, unprecedented. We gave it the name Belau because beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium are enhanced by factors of hundreds relative to solar system abundances.
So in the paper, you say this might be from like an exoplanet with a magma-like ocean or maybe like a supernova, or possibly extraterrestrial. You were just talking about that Voyager. I know that's where you get a lot of crap from people in the scientific community. No one bats an eye when you're like supernova or exoplanet, but when you say extraterrestrial, we pay attention. Sometimes you get laughed at by other scientists, but do you think that like that is a total legitimate effort to uncover here?
Yeah, definitely a possibility because we launched 5 probes to interstellar space over the past half a century. Voyager 1, Voyager 2, Pioneer 10, Pioneer 11, and New Horizons. So imagine a civilization that had a much longer technological age, and it could have polluted interstellar space with debris, technological debris. This could be just like space trash, and it would accumulate in interstellar space like plastics in the ocean. And we just need to look around us in our neighborhood. We haven't done so until the last decade. So it's a completely new frontier, and there might be low-hanging fruit for us to pick up. So I'm a theoretical physicist, but yet I decided to lead an expedition, an experiment to figure out what this object was made of. And lo and behold, it's made of something we've never seen before. And the next step is to find bigger pieces of it. We might go back on another expedition because you can easily tell the difference between a rock and a technological gadget. The gadget may have buttons on it.
And, Professor Loeb, how do we know that this isn't just, I mean, this is the bottom of the seafloor. The sea is so unexplored. How do you know that maybe like uranium and beryllium just hang out together down on the bottom of the seafloor?
Because we also went to control regions that were very far from the meteor location and didn't find those things there, only near the meteor path. And moreover, we found an excess of spherules, these molten droplets, along the meteor path. And moreover, we found isotopes of iron that clearly indicate in the ratio of isotopes that it cannot be from this Earth, it cannot be from the moon or from Mars, because the isotope ratio is very different than you find on these objects that are familiar to us in the solar system.
And Professor, we're almost out of time here, but this is a very big question I've been dying to ask you. This is all coming at a time when you almost got three things happening in the search for extraterrestrial life. You've got very hard science, like what you're doing, SETI, that kind of stuff. You've got these very odd encounters and sensor anomalies with U.S. military pilots. And then you've got this bizarre testimony from a former intelligence officer who says he's been told, like, there are alien bodies and alien craft that the government might have. Real quick, what do you make of all of that?
Right. So it's all about evidence. You shouldn't believe stories that people tell you. So if Grush's testimony is supported by materials that we can all see, I would believe it. Otherwise, it could be fabricated. So let's wait and see. It may well be easier to collect the information from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean than to get it from politicians in Washington, D.C.
And we will wait and see for the next time you set out on a ship. Professor Avi, or Captain Avi Loeb, I should say, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.